Sometimes. Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to H3 TV, where we talk about health, hope, and happiness. Three of the things that I believe are needed most in the world right now. We need a little bit more healthy for all of us individually and collectively. We need hope about a bright future and good things coming our way. And we always need more happiness. And so I created this TV show that we would do a talk show every Wednesday at noon. We love when you join us, take your lunch break with us, and we spread something about health, hope, or happiness. Today, I'm so grateful. I have Mari here with me today, and we're going to talk about happiness. We can never have too much happiness in the world, can we? I know I
No.
smile a lot, right? Sometimes people get a little overly like, can you not be so happy all the time? In fact, somebody already told me that this morning, and I just laughed at her. And she said her husband, it drives him crazy too, but it's good for all of us. Anyway, we agreed. So Mari's with us today. I want Mari to tell us a little bit about who you are. What do you do, Mari? And then we'll go through some questions.
Well, thank you, Annie, for having me. I'm delighted to be here spreading happy. So, what I do is I help executives and leaders sort of upgrade their presence on camera or if they're speaking in meetings and on stages. And part of that is happiness because nobody wants to watch an unhappy presenter in any format. So, if we're not sort of connecting to real happiness and real joy, we're not showing up as our best selves to the people around us. So this is a perfect topic. I'm delighted to be chatting about it.
I'm glad that you're here to chat about it because you're right. And people feel that happiness. And that's when I am doing these interviews, one thing that I'm always cautious about is like, please don't go down a bunny trail of something unhappy because people need our positive. They need our energy. They're tuning in to feel, experience some of our happiness as well as our knowledge. So, what are five of your keys? How do you stay happy? Because it's hard to be happy all the time, especially on the camera, right?
Oh goodness. It really is. And I really think that first off, happiness is not the antithesis of acknowledging that things can be challenging in the world. Happiness is choosing how we're going to respond. And one of my favorite things to do, and I do this before I go on camera, but I do this a couple times a day, is to crinkle my eyes and think of what I call micro gratitudes, which are things I'm really grateful for, but they're not huge. They're not like my kids or my spouse or my health or something that I could rabbit trail into anxiety. But I will take a moment and go, my cat is really cute today, or ice cubes make things cold. I love that. And just have a moment of a tiny little bit of gratitude. So that's one of the things I do. I also really personally get a lot of energy from nature, whether that's a plant on my windowsill or just going outside and feeling the breeze, getting into my body a little bit. And then I think that really it's about connecting with others. I'm an introvert despite what I do for a living. And there are days when I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody. And I'm sort of crawled into my little hole. But when I go out of myself and connect and listen and try to help and be there for others, that always increases my happiness, even on the days when things are a little challenging, because we can keep resetting to the happiness.
Yeah, I love that. I love your answers. I love ice cubes. I'm like a weirdo about ice cubes, and I've never shared this really. So I love that you're sharing that.
We
I
got ice
love
cubes.
ice, and like when I was pregnant, I would go to McDonald's to get a drink, but mostly it was that I just loved their ice cubes. They had these little ice cubes, so it just made me happy. Those little things, and I love the great reminder that it doesn't have to be huge things, right? It doesn't have to be huge things. I think sometimes like well, things are easy for you because everything's great, which that's not true about anyone's life, no matter what you see on social media. Not everything, everybody has struggles. But the nature piece also, like that's why we're moving to Florida is I want to walk the beach every day. And that, no matter how stressful, in a good way or a bad way, because that busyness can wear us out too, whether we're an extrovert as I am or an introvert, we can get overwhelmed. But just getting out and going for a walk, oh, that is so important. So I love those ideas. And I think all of it is connected, right? Like when you go
Mhm.
get fresh air or look at your plant, you are like, you know what? I feel happy and that makes me feel healthier. So it's very
Mhm.
connected. So that's a beautiful thing. And I'm all about serving others. So I love that you said that. Like when you feel that thing, I visualize you right there and just like, nope, get out of myself and go serve someone. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. How about when life is hard or does feel harder, someone we love is going through a challenge or we're going through a challenge, how do you find your happiness then?
I think it really is like a practice. It's like any kind of discipline. You have to keep coming back to it. And
Mm,
I've certainly had some difficult things, and I've had friends who have some difficult things, and finding almost the language of happiness for that moment.
mm,
So, an example is recently I had a friend who was going through a bone marrow transplant, and he was so ill, and he couldn't even, you couldn't send him flowers, you couldn't be in the room with him. This is happening during COVID. He's going through a hard time. And I was going through some hard time, and we didn't even speak. What I would do is I would text him, because he's a photographer, a picture of something beautiful from nature. And he didn't have to talk to me, he didn't have to deal, right? He could just see that text. But for me, finding what's the beautiful image I'm going to send became my sort of, all right, I'm going to go back to something positive. I'm going to look for a way to connect in terms of positivity without an expectation of outcome, without expecting him to go, oh, thank you, Mari, so much, or even text me back, because he was, in many cases, too sick to do that. But just that little moment. And I find when things get rough, I have to really go back to, okay, I'm not going to not acknowledge when things are rough. I hate when people do just think positive thoughts and don't acknowledge that it's tough. It's tough. Deal with it. But come on, it's tough. It's tough. But okay, it's tough. It's COVID, or Colorado right now. There's so much smoke. It's hard to go outside, right?
mm.
And so I have to go. Okay, I can't go outside. But what
What can
little thing can I do? I can stretch for a moment, or I can put my plant in a new pot. I'm talking about plants today. That's my thing today, I guess.
I-
But really making commitment is recommitment, and continually recommitting what is the one little positive thing I can focus on without disacknowledging that, okay, it's stressful. I got true.
I
That
love, Mari, that I don't know if you're doing this intentionally or not, but I'm all about choice. And you already said that, happiness is a choice. But do you know that when you sent that text to him, you are actually taking your three things that make you happy and transferring, right? Because you said small things. So a photo's a small thing, right? You said nature. You said being outside. Okay, so a flower, a plant, a picture of something in nature that's beautiful. You're transferring that to him. And then you said doing something for someone else. And you're doing that. And like, that's so beautiful. And I think that's what sometimes people, it can be overwhelming. Life can have challenges, but you already have these intentional habits yourself. Like, I'm going to choose happiness. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And what will I do to do it? But then you also recognize, okay, there's other people that are hurting. How can I transfer these things that bring me joy onto them? And you know what? I can't see them. I can't spend money, or I'm not going to, whatever. Can I still do it? I love that you're making it simple. And that's what I want the listeners to hear, is that it is possible to connect with people and to experience happiness in simple, bite-sized pieces, and to not only experience it ourselves but share it with another. So I love that. I love that you text him pictures in his pain and in his struggle. You couldn't do, some people might say, well, I can't visit him. Done. Well, no,
right,
what can you do? What can you do? I can't bring flowers. What can you do? And I think it's about a mind shift of, instead of thinking what we can't do, thinking about what can we do for ourselves or for others when there's a challenge. So do you think, I think you kind of already answered this, but do you think happiness is inside job or outside job? What do you think about that?
actually, I think it's both. I think we have responsibility to recommit to happiness and try to create happiness and try to amplify happiness. And I think we also need to acknowledge that there are some times where people have circumstances that are really hard. There are some times that we are in environments that might be toxic, right? So I don't think we do either or. I think we recommit to our own happiness again and again and again. And then we look at the world around us and go, okay, if something isn't right, what little thing can I do to help? Or do I need to just say, thanks, my time here is done. I'm going to move along down the road, right?
Yeah.
I think we can blame ourselves sometimes when we go through a challenging situation that feels out of our control, or we're in an environment that's really toxic. We can blame ourselves for it instead of going, okay, sometimes it's just an environment, but I still have choices. How do I make the choices to amplify what's good, or to move along, or to support someone? So I think we're always doing this balance.
Yeah.
Do the inside job and then try to bring it to the outside.
Yeah. And I think one of the words you're really describing there for people is setting boundaries too. Knowing, like, I can't change other people. but I can choose how long I'm in an environment. If I stay there, what am I going to do about that? How do I? And I think that's an important reminder for our listeners is that, we do have to set boundaries. Some things are unhealthy or unhappy, and maybe we still want a part of our life, but maybe we limit the amount of time or we create more space or whatever it is. So I think you're right on is that happiness is an inside and an outside job. I sometimes think happiness, when it's a beautiful day, I years ago, I think I love sunshine. I'm all about sunshine. But years ago, I remember it was raining and it was someone's wedding and they were like, I prayed for this and why? And they were, and I was thinking in my head, a farmer prayed that it would rain.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody else is happy because of the environment outside. Some people love the desert. I love the ocean. But there's always a different perspective to look at the same situation too, to decide, is there something beautiful in this, or am I going to just focus on what isn't? So I love that. Okay, what's the difference between happiness and joy, Mari? What do you think about that?
I love that question. I think that's such a great question. And I'm sure everybody has their own answers, but I think of joy as this deeper, foundational thing that I can be living from a place of joy and have a moment. The other night I was driving and Google Maps sent me to the wrong place and it was raining and I didn't know where I was. And I remember saying very out loud, I am not happy about this. Like, I did not like that I couldn't see where I was and I was lost. But joy is underneath, right? I think that joy is a place of meaning and joy is a place of being aligned with your values and your integrity and what matters to you. And joy is also about having the people and things around you that support you to be your best so that I can be driving around in the middle of the night totally lost, afraid I'll never get home, but I'll know when I do get home, I'll be okay, everything's fine because I'm not out of alignment with myself, right?
Yeah.
But there have been times where I've let myself get out of alignment with myself. And that's a dark place. You don't want that, right?
No, she said, no, don't go there. I think that too. I think for me, I am a joy-filled person because I am grateful and I am blessed and my being is full of joy for who I am and where I get to live and how I was created. But happiness for me is more situational. Like there's happier days, but there's times my GPS is always, and we have talked, Sasha, you have got to make better choices. You are getting me lost. And she's like, reroute. You're going to get it. So I love that you said out loud, even that's part of being healthy and happy too, is acknowledging when you're not.
Mhm.
I am not happy right now. I am lost and it's raining. And because sometimes we are not always happy, but you also have that core of joy of knowing you're going to be okay and you get to go home. I did the AIDS ride in 1999 and it was very challenging. I'm not going to go into the whole details, but I was happy on it. I was always like smiling and riding my bike from Minneapolis to Chicago, and people would ride alongside me and they'd say, how come you're so happy? How come, you should take a ride. I ripped up my leg. You should get in the sweep. I said, oh no, I'm not getting in the sweeper. I'm going to do every mile. But I remember in my head thinking, and you just reminded me, Mari, is that I knew that at the end of those 6 days, I could go home to a husband that loved me and 3 healthy children. And there were people on that ride with me that didn't know how long they'd live, that didn't have a supportive spouse or couldn't have children or whatever their story was. And as I listened to their stories, I thought, in just a bit, I'll be done being uncomfortable and I'll go back to something beautiful. But not everybody gets that. So don't complain about the inconvenience of this ride, which it was inconvenient and difficult, but don't complain because so I love that I think there's something beautiful about, you're going home. You know that home is this place filled with love and beauty and where you belong. And I don't know, nobody else has said that. And you're right. Everybody has their own answers. And I love the different, even if I use the same questions, the different answers, but there's
And you said something there that I think is really interesting too, that some people may not have that home yet, but you can work towards building it.
That's right.
Because I've gone through some dark spaces where I didn't have anything to go back to, right? But you can work on what is the foundation block I'm putting in today that will create that home for tomorrow.
Yes.
So
whatever that vision is, that's right. And I grew up without a home. My first home was when I was 28 years old. So I know that so well, which again, those little gratitudes, things that other people can take for granted when we've gone through a struggle, we don't take for granted as easily. And Yeah, I think that's really important. Just that word home to me is very powerful because of
Mm.
not having, and great reminder, Mar, like not everybody's where they want to be in their life right now. And that's partially why we're doing these calls too, these interviews, is that I know I have listeners that are struggling, that are hurting, that are feeling isolated and alone. And I wanted to come into people's home and say, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And always work on ourselves, right, to get to who we want to be. So then we can create the relationships and the environment of where we dream of living, because if we do the work, it's amazing what can happen and who is drawn into us, right? When we're healthy and we're happy, right?
And just something like listening to your show is a way people create the foundation for more happiness and health
Yeah,
because they are recommitting, they're refocusing, they're allowing that your energy into their lives, and that does change things. It may not change things in the next 10 minutes,
that's right.
but it will change things over time so that
So,
we can get the momentum in the right direction and create lives that we love.
yeah, so important. And I always remind people when they're really stuck, like, what are you listening to? What are you watching? What are you reading? Get off the news. People are addicted to the news. I'm like, well, that's why you feel down. I had one woman, I guess I did a video, this is years ago, on the demons in your life. Like, what are the demons? And she was going through, or what are your, I don't know, something, but she listened to it 12 times. She said she had just gone through a divorce. She was hating herself. And she's like, I've all just been feeling like beating myself up, feeling, and you kept saying, so what? So put that in the closet and move forward. Like, don't let that dictate the rest of your life or whatever. I don't know. So I think it is important what people listen to. So what steals your happiness, Mari? What are those things that do sometimes block you from your great intention, your great choices, and the great vision of how you do this? What are some of the things that steal that?
Well, I love that you brought up the news because I absolutely have a very social media and news I put in very small boxes. Right? I very much limit the amount of time I get with those because my blood pressure goes up and I get super cranky. Like, this is not necessarily helping me. I give myself a little bit because I don't want to be disconnected from the world, right? But I have to put those in boxes. And I also think comparison, when we compare ourselves to others, certainly when I compare myself to others, I can get into a rabbit trail that isn't helpful.
That's right.
So the news, the social media, the comparison, and the perfection. Right.
Mhm.
So I did a class on Monday, and it wasn't quite the class I had envisioned I would do. Right. I could have really got into, oh, I'm such a failure, instead of going, you know what? It wasn't the class I had in my mind, but there was some good stuff there, and they got some good stuff, and they seemed to like it. So it's not perfect. So what? There'll be a reset down the road. That was just rehearsal for the next step, whatever. So I try to acknowledge the things that can grab me: self judgment, perfectionism, comparison, social media, news, and then just imagine letting them go the way you would imagine water running through your fingers. Like, yeah, it's true, but it
Mm.
doesn't have to be something I grab onto.
I love that visual. Water dripping through your fingers, running through you. Just let it go. I love that. Great with vision. I'm a visual learner. Also, why I do this rather than a podcast is I need to see people's faces. Like, it just connects me, and I know it connects our audience. So I really wanted it to be live. Um, yes, I am such. I often, almost always, with presentations, remind people, social media is good. There's a lot of good things about it, but there's a lot of bad. So if you're going to use it, you've got to limit the time. And for those of us that get sucked into hour after hour, I always tell people 10 or 15 minutes, but now I realize, Mari, if I'm telling them 10 or 15 minutes, that's their alarm. They're never going to watch our whole interview. So 30 minutes on Wednesdays at noon. Otherwise, 10 to 15 minutes on your alarm. And really what happens on it is it wastes our time, but it also is a comparison thief, right? And so we get on social media, we're feeling okay about ourselves, and all of a sudden we see someone else's life and it looks better. And I think we can really beat ourselves up, and comparison steals joy. And I love that you're sharing about your speech, because I heard years ago there's only two speeches in the whole world: the one that you give and the one that you wished you gave, right? So dang it, that one wasn't exactly how I thought. But we always have high expectations of ourselves. And it's amazing to me when I don't feel like I hit it out of the park, and the audience comes up like, that was amazing. And I was like, really? Okay, thank you. Don't go into that doubt. Now, the perfectionist part, Mari, I can't relate to so much. I think my husband prays I'll be a perfectionist because I'm like, who cares? It's all going to work out. Whatever. It's all good. We can always have a do over. But I know that I kind of tease about perfectionists, but I say, how do they go to sleep? And I said, they always go to sleep disappointed
Yeah.
because they have such high expectations for themselves. And as perfectionists are listening to us, Mari, and you can relate to this and help them, is that, you know, when you give yourself some grace, I get up every morning, I think, man, if I screw up 10 things, I'm not doing bad. And I go, if I only screwed up 5, I think I won. But my husband is a perfectionist. I love him dearly, but he puts so much pressure on himself to not only do everything, but do everything right. And that's exhausting, right? That's sets yourself up to be exhausted and disappointed at the end of the day. So if someone's listening, Mari, and they are a perfectionist, what are, I mean, you gave kind of going through the hand, letting that go, but do you have any other specific tips for perfectionists?
Actually, I do. So
Okay.
I have this gift box,
Love it.
but inside this gift box are monsters.
Oh, there you go.
Because we are focusing on the monsters in our own head. We're focusing on this isn't good enough, this isn't good enough. But what people really want is our gift. So I literally will pull out a monster and make a funny voice and talk to myself about my stupid idea in my funny voice because I can't take it seriously. For me, part of happiness and joy is silliness, lighting up, playing, right? Because I think we need to focus on our gift, not our monsters. So I literally keep this on my desk within reach so I can pull out a monster when I'm losing it and remind myself it's just my mental monster. Everyone else has their mental monsters, and that doesn't matter.
That's right. That's
But
beautiful.
so much energy. Ugh.
Yeah. And everyone does have those for a variety of reasons, but that's a great visual tool that Mari just gave you. So if you are struggling with perfectionism, get not professionalism, be professional if you need to. Get some monsters, get some toys, and also play creates a different part of our mind. So when I do belief cards with people, I'm always like, what's something silly that's actually not true that we can add into them so we can have that laughter? I love your playful spirit. It's like people need that laughter, which breaks that perfectionism. It breaks it down like, nope, can't be perfect here. Let's just be goofy. Oh my gosh, I am such a dork. Did I really do that? Oh, I did. And laughing at ourselves and then being able to move on. That's awesome. So what brings you the most happiness at home and at work? What do you really love? What lights you up, brings you that joy? What are the things at home that you like? Maybe a couple things at home and a couple things in your career that really give you that.
Well, I have to say my cat. I'm just one of those cat ladies. I call him my oxytocin monster because he walks through the room and he does something that makes me laugh, or he's cute and I have to cuddle him. So I'm definitely a cat person, right? But also just sharing things with friends. I love, and some, COVID had its challenges, but we still did it. I love just having coffee or having people over and just hearing about somebody else's world so I can get out of my own world and into somebody else's world. That brings me huge joy.
Mm.
Um, and then, I think it's almost the same, just in a different flavor career wise, which is that moment when somebody stops pushing down who they are and just lets it all out. And they think it wasn't perfect or that they said too much or it was silly or stupid or whatever. But you can see the passion and brilliance pop out. And they're like, this is what I believe in. It just gives me goosebumps. I'm like, yes, I want to see us all bring out our best.
Mm.
So when that happens, I get very excited.
I love that. It's really awesome. I'm a dog person. I have never
Mhm.
had dogs until 10 years ago. My husband and I never had a dog. And then I started reading about all the good that dogs bring into your home regarding anxiety and peace and comfort. And we were raising the kids and there was just some stuff going on. And it was like, oh, maybe I'll get a dog. My husband's like, did we talk about getting a dog? I'm like, no. But now we've had him for 10 years. We have 2 dogs now. And our smallest one is like 9 pounds and he barks at the big dogs. And the owners laugh at him and it makes me laugh because he thinks he's a big dog and he wants to be a big dog. And recently we do early morning walks and recently we were out on a walk and he likes to chase the birds. And a bird like sat in front of him and wagged its tail, its feathers at our dog. And my poor dog self-esteem, but they crack you up. Pets crack you up. Like they're just like so playful and fun. And it is a good way to de-stress and to like, my one dog will chase this carrot that my daughter brought him, stuffed animal forever all night and just crap you up. So even on a busy day, you go home and pets are just happy and they truly love unconditionally, right? And there's so much to learn from them, how we can treat one another. And on our worst day and on our best day and on our fun day and on our grumpy day, they still just love us, right? Your cat and my dogs.
And they don't worry about self-judgment. They don't worry about whether they're good enough or any of that stuff. They just are.
They just are. They lick themselves and they are just comfortable wherever they are doing their thing.
Do it.
So, all right. What else do you want to share about happiness? Do you have a story? Do you have a poem, a thought, something you want to share about it?
I guess my thought is, what can you do in the next week to extend happiness to someone who's not normally included?
I like that.
There's so often, we'll be laughing in a group and one person's sort of off to the side. Maybe they don't know the joke. Maybe that's not what they're interested in. How can we bring them in? How can you reach out to somebody who may be a little bit lonely? I have a friend who sends me periodically a 2-word text. YER, you're cute. And it's just his way of saying, I see you, I'm thinking of you, right? But he does it when he knows that I maybe am a little stressed or a little something's going on. What can we do to reach out more? I'm challenging everyone. We tend to include some people and forget about or exclude others. Let's widen that circle. It'll make us all happier.
That's right. I love that. I'm going to get in trouble here with what I say next, but I'm sorry, Minnesota listeners. But Minnesota is known as Minnesota nice, right? But as a coach, my primary work is speaking, but I do some coaching. I can't tell you the number of executives, transplant executives, that have moved to Minnesota and say, "Well, everybody said Minnesota is nice."
Mhm.
Well, they're kind of nice. They wave and say hi and they walk by my desk and they're friendly. But after work and in the evenings and on the weekends, nobody invites me.
Yeah.
Nobody includes me. And they all have their little cliques or groups, or they still go back to their high school friends or college. How do we do that, Annie? And I'm always encouraging people. So I love that, Maria. And I think it spreads happiness, right? That random acts of kindness. I don't know if you guys have it in there, but in Minnesota, they always say the drive-through difference. And so when it first came out, I went through 3 drive-throughs that day. But now they'll get 40 cars in a row. So I buy for the car behind me, and then they don't have to do anything. They just receive. But then people are like, well, then I'm going to buy for the car behind them. And people calling, crying, like, oh my gosh, I was with a family of 5. It was my last $40, and someone bought it from me. They're just like, just include people. Think of other people. I love that because there's a lot. I think there has been for a long time a lot of lonely people. I think we're so busy looking down or looking at our screen, we've lost sight. But even with COVID, I think even more
God,
people have been isolated and alone. And that's a big part of my heart work and my drive is that mental compassion, mental kindness instead of mental toughness. Like, I don't want you to be isolated and trying to tough it out alone and being lonely. Have coffee. I love that. Oh, I love that. Thank you for that was good. It's important. Spread that happiness and kindness, right? And we also, it multiplies our own. Like nothing brings me more joy than to make someone else happy, right? So I love the you are cute too. All right. So Mari, if my listeners are saying, hey, I want to know more about Mari. I love her monsters in the box. They're decorated pretty, but then they're still there. Or whatever it is, they want to work with you. How would someone get a hold of you? Tell us.
Sure. So I want you to think about the phrase more impact, less stress, because that's my website with dashes. So it's more impact less stress.com.
Okay.
So it's pretty obvious, right? If you're stressed about putting yourself out there with virtual presentations or speaking or boardrooms or executive presence, I have there's a lot of skills that we can give you that'll make it easier and more authentic. So check me out at moreimpactlessstress.com.
So Mari, are you more of a speaker, a trainer, a coach? Are you coaching people on presentation skills?
So I was a coach for 20 years, and now I've gone more into training and presenting. I also have a background as an actor. I know I said I was an introvert. Long story. So I do a lot of training for organizations in virtual presenting, and then one-on-one, sort of somewhere between training and coaching on helping people because it's very skill based,
Okay.
helping people really get that presence stuff down.
I love that. Yeah, lots of people are introverts that are speakers or actors and actresses because they can be out in front of people. They just need to go refuel alone and then be out. My daughter, I have two sons that are more extroverted and one daughter that's more introverted, but she probably talks to more people than either of them as a recruiter. So, they're all, no matter what your personality is, you can feel your presence is very beautiful. You have beautiful presence. You're very comfortable. You're very relaxed, and you're very easy to connect with, which I always think whenever we present or teach or interact, ideally, we're never talking at people.
Right.
We're talking with people. I think when you are a performer and you go to a musical, when you leave singing, it's because you felt like you were part of the show, not just watching the show. They drew you in. And so as a speaker, I always think, I want people to feel like I'm telling their story, even if I'm telling mine, to engage that. So I love that, Mari. Anything else?
Go be happy this week, please.
Go be happy and make someone else happy, right?
Yes.
So thank you so much for joining us for H3 TV, where we gather over the lunch hour every Wednesday afternoon to encourage and inspire through stories about health, hope, and happiness, because we all need just a little bit more. Take care.